It's been another busy week of cruise news and developments, including a surprising CDC intervention against cruising, why April looks like when cruises will really resume, more cancellation news, lots of progress in the UK, what the Caribbean is saying about cruises calling again, cruise lines cash burn, and so much more. I'm Gary Bembridge, and this is another of my Tips for Travellers cruise updates, where I will unpick the biggest breaking cruising news and discuss, importantly, what it means for all of us as cruisers. First up, I want to discuss the latest move by the CDC, that's the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in the United States. In the past week, they surprised pretty much everyone by ramping up their advice against cruising to the highest possible level. It is now level 4, very high level of COVID-19. It says, and I quote, "The CDC recommends that all people avoid travel on cruise ships, including river cruises, worldwide, because the risk of COVID-19 on cruise ships is very high." The timing is extremely interesting, as first of all, there are no options for US citizens to go cruising at the time this announcement was made, yet they still made it. Let's take a look at the situation. Remember, there are no cruises operating in or out of USA ports. The option for US residents to cruise in the Caribbean is gone after the Sea Dream put their cruises on hold after the outbreak on their first voyage, and the limited cruises that are operating in Asia and Europe are only open to local residents. On top of this, the CDC and lines are supposed to be working and partnering together to get cruising to resume out of USA ports as soon as possible. This, of course, is based on the CDC's very own framework for conditional sailing, which replaced the no-sail order. Now, this plan includes lines running test voyages, which the lines are hoping that they can do as soon as early January. So the implications of this new advice on these running at this stage is not clear, but it seems hard to see how they can run when the advice is that nobody should be cruising. Now, many of you will remember that when the current White House Corona Task Force placed pressure on the CDC about lifting the no-sail order in October, it was reported at that time that the CDC wanted the order to be extended to at least the end of February 2021. So over the coming weeks, it is worth remembering this, and also that the CDC decide the pace that cruise lines will pass through their defined stages to resume cruising. And so, in my view anyway, their latest update advising people not to cruise does not suggest an easy, smooth or fast timeline ahead. The UK is another country with strong travel advice against ocean cruising. There is now, though, some exciting progress towards cruising resuming in the UK, with 3 new items of news. First of all, the UK government has agreed a pathway for cruising to reopen as they accept the Clear and Cruise Line's proposed protocol. So that's a big step forward. Now, in an interview with the Telegraph newspaper in the last few days, Grant Shapps, who's the UK Transport Secretary, he said that the cruise sector has worked hard to guarantee kind of COVID secure travel, and that for the final clearance, lines first of all had to prove compliance to those protocols, and secondly, the government required that the cruise lines guarantee that they would pick up any cost of repatriation if there were any outbreaks on ships while cruising kind of further than the UK. Now, he said, and I'm going to quote what he said, is provided that the agreement on repatriation is agreed, this greenlights cruises as long as they are COVID secure and using COVID tests. However, there is a catch, as a specific date has not been agreed. The UK Global Travel Task Force, which deals with all these things, they recommend cruising should only restart once the country's national coronavirus alert level is reduced from the current level down to about a 3 or a 2. So although they have not set a specific date, this is, in my view, a really important step forward, as the UK have accepted the proposed cruise line protocols, which include testing before boarding, reduced capacity, masks, social distancing, controlled excursions, all those kind of things. And unlike the US, which added lots more layers and requirements, the UK have only added the repatriation costs requirement. Now, Clear the Cruise Line Association is lobbying for a much more specific date to be set, especially what they're pushing for is let lines start running UK-only port sailings for UK residents only. In other good news in the UK, MSC Cruises will home port a ship every single year in Southampton from this coming summer, so 2021. They're going to start with a massive MSC Magnifica. Now, this is the first time a ship has been home ported by them in the UK for many years, so showing lots of faith in cruising. Also in Southampton, which is the biggest cruise port in the UK, they've announced they're going to open a 5th cruise terminal also in the summer of 2021, and this is going to be designed to handle ships capable of carrying up to 6,000 passengers, and that is about to be built right now. Returning back to the United States for a while, one big milestone did happen this past week that I'm recording this, as the first Carnival Cruise Line ship has returned to US waters. Now, early on after the shutdown in the US, Carnival Cruise Lines and their sister lines, that includes things like Princess, Holland America and so on, they pulled all their ships out of USA waters, and they have been out of the US for many, many months. Now, many of the Carnival cruise ships actually stayed quite close to the US, so they were in like the Bahamas or other Caribbean islands, but many of them also sailed all the way to Europe or even to Asia to repatriate crew. But a few are now heading back to the United States to start the process of being able to sail again. The Carnival Horizon was the very first of their ships back. It returned to Miami early on the 23rd of November to start working on those complicated processes to prepare for returning to service. Horizon is the first Carnival Cruise Line ship that is scheduled to return to sailing in the US. The second will be the Carnival Breeze, and this is also due to return to the United States pretty shortly. So the return of the first Carnival ship to the US is definitely a milestone and definitely a step on the journey for them to resume cruising in the US. Other ships that also left the US are also on their way back, including ships from Disney and from Holland America. So despite all the news from the CDC, there is steps looking forwards. Now, as I covered in the last update, cruise lines, especially those that rely on multi-country itineraries, are having to cancel deeper and further into 2021. And this continued this past week. Now, despite all the moves in the UK, P&O Cruises based there has just extended their cancellations into April 2021. And they say this is in response to the huge uncertainty still around if and when European ports will be open. To be honest, looking at the way cancellations are moving globally, the signs are increasingly that April looks like the month that most lines really believe that sailings will resume globally, so after winter has passed. People have asked me to include the latest situation on the return to cruising for the major lines in these updates from now on. So here is the latest at the time of recording, though I have to say I am almost 100% sure that the January resumptions currently scheduled will move back. It's hard to see them just happening. So the dates I'm also going to give you are based on when at least one ship in the line's fleet is due to start sailing. So let's take a look at them. In January, you have Royal Caribbean, Norwegian, Celebrity, Marella, Regent Seven Seas, Oceania, and Virgin due to start sailing. In February, you have Carnival, Disney Cruises, Fred Olsen, and Viking Ocean. March, Azamara, Celestial Cruises, Crystal Cruises, Cunard, and Windstar. In April, P&O Cruises, Star Clippers, Holland America, Princess, Saga Cruises, Seabourn, and Silversea. Although these are target dates and rely on much to happen, MSC Cruises has just announced that they are the first international cruise line to receive the required health and safety certification to be able to resume cruising in Japan as scheduled also in April 2021. So MSC Bellissima, they'll be deployed to Japan. They're going to home port in Yokohama. They'll sail 6 to 9 night cruises in April, May and June, and again during October and November. Although for all of us, unfortunately, these cruises will be for Japanese guests only. But it's good to see more countries looking to open, but again, that magical date of April. Many of the popular ports across the Caribbean are using the shutdown, especially as it drags on, to upgrade and increase capacity to take more cruise ships rather than fewer cruise ships. We're seeing big investments to make it easier for more ships to call at some ports, especially the large mega ships. Clearly, Caribbean governments absolutely believe that people will return to cruising and in growing numbers in the years ahead. they're showing huge faith in cruising bouncing back and building basically capability to deal with that. Cozumel, already one of the busiest and most well known of all the cruise destinations in the Caribbean, they've been given the green light by the Mexican government to build a fourth cruise ship dock in Cozumel. Cozumel already has the Punta Langosta cruise pier, which is downtown at San Miguel. They've got the Puerto Maya cruise facility. This caters mostly for Carnival Corporation ships further south of downtown. And nearby is the International Pier, which is mainly used by the Royal Caribbean group vessels. So a fourth terminal coming to Cozumel. Construction on the new development, it begins in December. And the pier that they're building is set to cater for the new mega ships that are coming into service, so the biggest ships that are coming they can take. Now, meanwhile, in Nassau, which of course is the main cruise port in the Bahamas, they're also ramping up its cruise capability, and big works also starting there in December. In addition to repairs to existing piers, they're adding a berth that can hold 2 Oasis-class ships, and they're extending a pier to handle a third Oasis size vessel. They're also transforming the waterfront with new shops, new restaurants, and all sorts of new cruise facilities. Now, the Bahamas, of course, expects to become even more important to cruise lines sailing out of US ports through 2021, as it's the closest island to Florida home ports, and they definitely expect lines to return in the US initially with short cruises focused on their own private islands, most of which are actually in the Bahamas, and possibly add-on stops in Nassau. So they really are aggressively building capability. Now, I'm often also asked if the major cruise groups and lines will survive and which lines will go bust. Now, these questions started up again with more urgency following so many lines extending their cancellations into 2021. Now, an analysis I received this week, actually from an investor group, has calculated that the cruise industry is going to lose a staggering $20 billion in revenue across the world. That's a 71% plunge in revenue year on year. This is just massive. Now, I've actually made a specific episode previously looking at the whole financial health of the major groups and the huge amounts of funds that they have raised so far from this investment. So if you want to delve into that a little bit more, take a look at that episode. However, in the last week, the cruise lines have just taken in even more cash to tie them over even longer, I guess, with these cancellations and delays dragging on. Now, the Norwegian group, which includes, of course, Norwegian Cruise Line, Oceania, Regent Seven Seas, they issued 40 million shares and raised $830 million of cash during November. They have a projected burn rate at the moment of about $175 million every single month. So this new fundraising adds another 5 months of cash. So they now have enough money to have no sailing, no revenue right into the summer 2021. The Carnival group, so that includes, of course, Carnival, Princess, Holland America, Seabourn, Cunard, P&O Cruises, and many others. They are losing up to $650 million a month. They had raised a staggering $12 billion from investors up until November, and in November they added another $2 billion through issuing of shares and various debt notes. So they now have enough cash to carry them right through the summer with no selling and no revenue. So the major lines have funds, and what we're seeing is the financial community, a bit like the Caribbean, and they're seeing a huge confidence that cruising will return and grow, and they're putting a lot of money into the lines. The lines, of course, are not getting any government bailouts because they're incorporated and their ships are registered in tax havens like Panama, Liberia, and so on. These are the biggest news stories breaking in the last week or so that I felt you needed to know about, and a little bit of analysis about what I think they mean for us as cruise lovers. I have loads more tips for travelers, episodes full of cruising advice and tips. So why not enjoy another one right now?